Good morning, Roto Grinders. It's the morning grind presented by rotogrinders.com. I'm your host, Stevie TPFL. It's a Thursday slate. Nice little all-day slate on a couple sites today. So we're going to talk about all the games today since it's such a small slate. And that way it gives Dan an opportunity to talk about everything that's going on in the industry with Tennessee and Alabama. Some news came out today in Tennessee. So it'll give him time to talk about that. It'll give him time to go over the games in a briefer aspect. But I got a special guest today. My man, your old pal, and it is my friend Emac. How you doing today?
I'm doing good, Stevie. I'm doing good. First time on your podcast.
Yeah, we're like flipping roles here. You're usually hosting, and I'm usually, bringing the analysis, and it's going to be the other way around today.
We'll have to see if I'm up for the challenge.
I think you're up for anything, Emac. We've learned one thing with you over the years. There's never anything we can throw at you that you're not going to hit out of the park.
Well, I appreciate that. And nice little baseball metaphor there, Steve.
You like that? Yeah. I'm getting used to this whole podcast thing.
It's a little tricky at first. I filled in a few times for Dan over the years when he was gone. Got about a 5-minute tutorial on it, and then I was all set to go, and I couldn't quite figure it out, so I used to try to do them in one take, which is a little tricky from time to time. There are some wink, nod tips like buffer music and a few things like that, but I didn't get that part of the tutorial. All I got was how to upload it. So anyway, I'm looking forward to this. I'm just going to kick back and talk.
You got 5 minutes. Hold on. No. Anyway, all right, let's talk some baseball. We're going to actually use FanDuel. They got an all-day slate here. Which equals up to 9 games. So it's a nice little 9-game slate. The one thing that you want to always pay attention to is catcher news. If it's a guy that's probably caught 2 or 3 days, there's a good chance he might not catch today. So that's one thing that this all-day slate will kind of throw curveballs at you. We'll have pretty much all the lineups for the 12 o'clock and through 4 o'clock games, but pay attention to catcher news, and you can kind of project the rest of the lineup based on the pitcher hands. So let's talk about Philadelphia at Cincinnati, one of the best ballparks in baseball to hit at. We got Charlie Morton and Robert Stevenson. Any of these pitchers stand out to you here?
No, I had to do a double take there. Poor Charlie Morton was with Pittsburgh, I believe. He's been resurfaced with Philadelphia, so at least he's staying in Pennsylvania. But he can definitely be hittable by both righties and lefties. I prefer to focus on him with lefties. And then the other guy is Robert Stevenson, who is a rookie making his first start for Cincinnati. And if you'll recall at the end of last season, I think they had an entire rotation of rookies and then the oft-injured Tony Cingrani, who was barely a second-year player himself. So it sounds like Stevenson's coming up for the spot start, and then they're going to send him off to AAA, or he probably broke camp with the team. But looking at his spring training stats, 9.6 ERA in 4 starts.
Yeah, a lot of value here for hitters. Like you mentioned, Morton's a guy that we want to target with left-handed bats. 384 WOBA with a 37% hard contact rate against lefties last season. He's a guy that, Votto, one of the top options on the board because of this. I think Votto and Jay Bruce have a ton of upside, and I think they have a solid floor in this matchup as well.
Yes, I would concur with that. Although I will say, I'm going to have to see what cheapies we can uncover here for Philadelphia. I have a feeling on some of the other sides they're going to be incredibly underpriced. But otherwise, the Cincy bats stand out.
Yeah, and a guy like Franco, 3,100, hit a home run in the game on Wednesday. Franco's a guy that you can definitely look at 3,100. He presents upside. And like you said, Stevenson, nothing really stands out to me with Stevenson, so I don't mind targeting some of these Philly bats at the top of the order, and I honestly don't mind a game stack here. This ballpark's great. It's going to be a daytime game, which is going to probably make it a lot hotter than what we'll see most of the time here in Cincinnati.
The one guy I would like to maybe take a chance on from Cincy would be Scott Schebler, who is running in their outfield, I believe, and he's minimum price.
Yeah, I accidentally left him in a lineup on opening day, and he scored 9 points for me. So
yeah, he didn't get the start. They started Adam Duvall instead.
I like him just for that reason. So let's swing it on over. White Sox at Oakland. Interesting game here. Latos, Graveman. Neither one of these pitchers do anything for me. Any thoughts on these guys?
No desire for either. Latos is coming over from Cincy. Kendall Graverman is kind of a meh pitcher. He's going to be an innings eater is about what he projects to, but they don't have a ton of stuff going on right now with the Athletics. The one bonus for him is going to be the ballpark. There is quite a bit of foul territory on down the first base and third base line. So while that helps pitchers' ERA keep it down, keep it suppressed, it kind of also helps with less opportunities for the hitters to hit extra base hits because they swing the bat less. Because if there's a foul and it goes down the baseline and the fielders can get it, they're out. What that also does, Stevie, though, is it limits strikeouts for the pitchers.
Yeah, I don't think either one of these guys are people you really want to worry about for strikeouts anyway. Let's start off with the White Sox bats. Anything really stand out to you here against a guy that struggles against lefties and righties?
You got to let me change my team over here. I would say, well, we have to consider Jose Abreu, since he hits the ball really, really far, according to our friend Sean Hugas, a.k.a. Ducky Succumbs.
Yeah, Abreu is a guy that definitely a high upside option. I think it'll be a good pivot off a guy like Votto in tournaments. I think Votto is definitely going to be the chalk here, and I don't mind Todd Frazier as well. Got something to prove here with the White Sox this year, and I think that, he did it yesterday, home run in that game against the White Sox or the Oakland Athletics.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. This has been just kind of an odd series there's been a fair amount of changes for the hitters on both teams. And because of the way Oakland runs their platoon system, we're just not quite familiar with each of their players yet. But one thing we do want to know is we want to trust them to almost always put their hitters in the most advantageous position for them against either lefties or righties, as the case may be.
Was there anything standing out here for you for Oakland?
Sadly, no.
The one guy that I think has a little bit of upside in this matchup is Josh Reddick. He's continued. I think they're just sold on him batting in the 3 or 4 spot this year. He's done it against lefties in the first couple games of the season, so I expect him to be in there in the 3rd or 4th spot. So I think at $3K on FanDuel, I think he has some upside at that price tag. Nothing, like you said, nothing really standing out to me. Oakland's a team in general that I'm going to be targeting a lot against left-handed pitching this year. If you want a cheap option at catcher, Stephen Vogt should be in there, 2,600. Fegley started the last 2 games for Oakland against the lefty, so Vogt should definitely get the start in this game, and he's only 2,600. Any thoughts on Stephen Vogt?
I believe in Stephen Vogt. I believe in Stephen Vogt. Yes, that's the one guy I missed. Darn it, I've been trying to figure out when I would do that chant for the first time on a show. Apparently, it will be on the podcast.
That's okay. We'll allow it this one time that you missed something. It doesn't happen very often. Miami at Washington. Detroit's already moving on from Miami. Washington's coming to town after playing an opening series with Atlanta. Tanner Roark, Adam Conley here. Conley is a lefty. Roark's a righty. Any love here?
Well, technically it's in the South here, Stevie, and we call him Roark. Tanner Roark.
Whatever you want to call him.
So I figured out why I was missing those players. All these pitchers have changed teams. So my for those of you on Excel, I pulled last year's pitching list. So the VLOOKUPs aren't working. The pitchers are all there. Of course, it's matching up the batters with the teams they're playing on. So it's not quite working. I'm trying to get ahead here. I know that because Mike Fierce is one of the guys we got to look at. And then also Conley. I had Conley listed as being for Philadelphia. So he is a lefty. So that means we got to look at the righties. No more Ian Desmond for us. But I will say Anthony Rendon, when healthy, is very, very good. I don't mind new acquisition Daniel Murphy, who we got. And I say we because I'm rooting for the Washington Nationals now that I live out here. We have Daniel Murphy from the Mets. And then how do you feel about Harper in a lefty-lefty?
If his price wasn't $5,100, I think you could consider him. But his price at $5,100, I think in a tournament, I'd rather just save the $200 and take a guy like Stanton. I think that similar upsides. I don't like the lefty-lefty for Harper here.
All right. I just throw that out there because there are a few sites that run a fairly dynamic pricing system. And from time to time, you will see somebody incredibly suppressed because of the pitcher they're facing or the reverse. So we used to see that on the old Draft Street site. If it was a lefty-lefty matchup or something of that nature, we could often get a good deal. If there was a late scratch or we thought a pitcher would get run early and they'd work their way into the bullpen, which sometimes happens at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, not saying that Harper's not an option. 421 WOBA against lefties last year. He hit over 300 against lefties last year. So not saying that Harper is not an option in this matchup. He would probably be very contrarian because of the lefty-lefty matchup. And this is a matchup against Conley that Washington could get to the bullpen quite quick here, and Harper could get some at-bats against a righty later in the game. So if you want to take a shot on Harper, go for it. It's very contrarian. It's a tournament option only. I wouldn't pay up $5,100 for this matchup with Harper and cash. I think another guy, I definitely would agree with you about the Rendon. Zimmerman, man, he's extremely cheap at 2,700. Lefty-righty matchup, good matchup for Zimmerman here at 2,700. You being a Washington Nats fan, what are your thoughts on Zimmerman at 2,700?
I'm not against him. However, you're going to eat up the first base spot on most sides. If you're playing somewhere where you can get him at a flex or a utility, that would be great. When he had his injury, well, one of his many injuries, he played the outfield, and DraftKings actually put him as a outfielder. He came up as a third baseman, fantastic defensive third baseman. He has elbow problems, so he can no longer make the throw across the field. So now the Nats have one of the best fielding first basemen. Of course, they got to get a replacement third baseman, but his bat speed's kind of slowing down a little bit. He's kind of getting up there. He's still the face of the franchise. The fans are very loyal to him here, so he should have an exciting opening day. And even Harper and Worth show deference to him, so it's kind of fun to see that.
Yeah, and one other guy, I hate mentioning this guy, but he's still an option. Jason Worth, 2,800 against a lefty. Like you said, home opener for your Nats. I think that Worth is in play as well in tournaments.
I would agree with that. He has traditionally been a lefty killer, and this is a good spot to put him in. A lot of people will not be on him. He is the savvy mountain man or savvy veteran. You know what, Stevie? You kind of start to look like him in the winter when you don't shave your beard off.
Oh, the beard's going strong right now. All right, let's switch it on over to the Miami Marlins bats. One guy that I think is a great cash game option here is D. Gordon. What's your thoughts on Mr. D. Gordon here?
I would tend to agree. I think we're going to see him run a lot. With Roark mostly bouncing in the bullpen last year, a little bit of long relief, a little bit of a swingman coming out as a spot starter. 2 years ago, he was a starter for most of the season down the stretch. I don't know that he has enough of a rapport with the catchers and dealing with base runners on a consistent basis, particularly someone as elite as D. Gordon. So I could see him maybe get caught napping a little bit. He's going to be excited. He made the starting rotation. They're going to be counting on him for a lot this year. Somehow I think he might not remember to look at the first base if somebody's on it.
Yeah, the thing that stands out to me here the most with Roark is high WOBA against lefties last year. Hard contact rate over 30%, so that's something we want to target. Really low strikeout rate around 12%. And his whip at 1.48. This is exactly the type of matchup that I think D. Gordon is, a premium play, because you always worry about D getting on base, and this matchup really sets up well for D to get on base. I like Yelich here as well. His price tag across the industry is down. I think he is cash game playable as well.
Yeah, I'm not quite as excited about Yelich. I do like to look at him. I think he is going to put it all together this year. He's one of my favorites. Personally, for myself, Giancarlo Stanton is going to be the obvious play because, 270 ISO and which is isolated power, and then a 385 WOBA against righties over the last 2 seasons. Derek Dietrich, who didn't get the start in their last game, but did come in for a pinch hit. And looked pretty good. Got a hit. I like Dietrich if he starts at a incredible bargain price of $2,200. Of course, you are going to sacrifice your hot corner spot. And then Justin Bour. Justin Bour, I believe that rookie had, what did he get, like 24 or 26 home runs for us last year?
Yeah, you stole my thunder there with Dietrich.
Oh,
I love giving out sneaky plays, and if he gets to start, I think he's an excellent play, especially on a site like Fantasy Aces or DraftKings, where you can, you really need one cheap guy to fit in some top pitching. I love him if he gets to start. I agree with you on Justin Bour, another guy that I really like on Fantasy Aces, where you technically could play 3 first basemen if you want to with their roster set up. I like him a lot over there. Houston at New York. This game was really frustrating last night on Wednesday night. A lot of runs in this game. So let's break it down here. Eovaldi against Fiers in New York again. Any thoughts on these two pitchers?
They both have their moments. Now, I will say Eovaldi has one of the most fast fastballs. However, he throws it straight and true, Stevie. So even though it's coming in at 94 miles an hour on average, which is more or less where he is for the last couple seasons, it's a very, very straight, flat fastball. So the good hitters can wait on it and they can get it. That can be a little tough. It'll be interesting to see early in the season if he can sneak him by a few people. And then if you look at Mike Fiers, you think about him, you're like, oh, his name. Oh, how do we pronounce that? Is it Fiers? He must throw really, really hard. He doesn't really throw really, really hard. So we want to get caught up in that misnomer. I think we can look at batters against both these guys.
Yeah, one thing I want to point out here for Fiers is he's going to be facing a pretty heavy left-handed lineup. The Yankees lineup is very left-handed heavy, and he actually was quite better against lefties than he was against righties last year, which is not something we typically see from a right-handed pitcher. We'll see. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out over this year because, yeah, the sample size was only 85 innings against lefties last year, but his numbers are really solid at a 22% strikeout rate and only a 287 WOBA. So those type of numbers are the type of numbers that could really get a Yankees team. But like you said, it's really too early in the season to kind of target either one of these pitchers at Yankee Stadium against two lineups that, as we've seen on Wednesday, can put up a lot of runs. So started off with the whole away team here, Emac. What do you think of the Astros?
Well, they are always going to be a lovely stack in tournaments or mini stack, and we're going to see them be very popular. So I'm curious to see this year how, if potentially we see a flip of the script where perhaps stacking, because it's becoming more prevalent than it was, say 2 or even 3 years ago, maybe that's not the way to go in tournaments. Now, there are some very, very good hitters on the Houston team, and I think they can take advantage of Eovaldi's flat fastball. The obvious ones that pop out are going to be Carlos Correa. We can also consider Luis Valbuena, who should find his way in the lineup. Here's another third baseman at 2,300 for you, 351 WOBA, and then he had a 220 isolated power. I generally look, if somebody has an isolated power number over 200, that's kind of where they start moving into the elite status. And for me, anybody with the WOBA over 340 kind of makes me interested, makes me take notice. That's one of my first filters I look at. So when I quote those numbers, usually it'll be someone that's at that level or higher. And then we have Carlos Gomez, who doesn't quite have the general isolated power as the others do, but it's because his hits tend to be they come in bunches and then they disappear for a while, but he has a little stolen base upside with him. So those are kind of the 3 guys I would consider. There might be 1 or 2 young guys that I'm not mentioning. I got to leave them for you. I'm trying to figure out who your sneaky play is going to be.
Yeah, on the Houston side, I like Colby Rasmus a lot. He's been batting in the 4 spot. If he continues to bat in the 4 spot, 3K, we know Yankee Stadium with left-handed bats are really nice. And Eovaldi, man, 345 WOBA against lefties last year. So I think Rasmus in the 4 spot is a really good option. I think I would play him in all formats, actually, if he's in that 4 spot at this price tag. I have no issue playing him in cash. So I think he's a really good play. I think all the things you said about these guys are spot on. I don't think I need to touch on it anymore. So we'll talk about some Yankees here. And I have a sneaky play, but I want to see who you like first here.
All right. What about, before we leave, George Springer? I almost considered him this evening. I see he got a home run, so maybe he used it up already.
You got the grand slam.
Oh, well, if you're going to get one, you might as well make it a big one.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Who might be sneaky? Well, Teixeira, nobody wants to play him. He starts off cold, but that wasn't quite the case last year. I think that was the anomaly in his long career, but I do like his numbers. He's 2,800. He's relatively cheap, but I got to ask, is it Alex Rodriguez? Is it A-Rod?
Sure is. Like I mentioned with Fires, he's a guy that much better against lefties last year than he was against righties. He had a 33.8% hard contact rate against righties last season. So I think this is a matchup that A-Rod could hit a home run. He's never a cash game option, but he's always a sneaky tournament play because nobody personally likes the guy. I know I don't. So he's always a sneaky play because he's always usually under that 15% mark.
All right. What about the old timer? Maybe a little Carlos Beltran?
He's off to a decent start this season. His price tag pretty cheap across the industry. So, 3,200 on FanDuel, probably a little bit too much for my liking when we've talked about so many other plays like Colby Rasmus, $200 cheaper. Sign me up there. I would much rather have a guy like him.
That's about all jumping off the page at me. Maybe, you always can mention Gardner because of the speed, stolen base upside, and he is usually overlooked, but nothing really exciting with him for me today.
Yeah, I agree. Giants at home against the Dodgers. Alex Wood, Jake Peavy. Alex Wood getting the start here against the Giants, and Peavy in a Giants uniform. What are your thoughts on these pitchers here?
Well, with regards to Peavy, it's kind of interesting. He was hurt a lot last year. Sometimes those of you new to the daily fantasy sports scene, he was a phenomenal pitcher back in the day, both with San Diego, and then he had his moments later with the White Sox. I want to say he got a Cy Young Award in maybe 2006 or 7 with the White Sox. So that was well before DFS started. However, here we are a decade later. He does better at the earlier part of the season, but he gets a lot of wear and tear on his body. He has very violent throwing motion. So if we're going to use him, we use him now. But goodness, those Dodgers have really been racking up the runs. Makes me a little nervous. And then Alex Wood. We kind of like him as a daily fantasy player because oftentimes towards the middle of the season, he usually is that fifth man. He gets skipped every now and then, a rain out, something gets shuffled around. He may come in the long relief, maybe come in on a bullpen or for a throwing day or whatever. So his price is usually suppressed. However, all of a sudden he's like the number 3 starter for the Dodgers. What the heck happened there, Stevie?
The Dodgers their pitching staff not so good,
banged up.
But let's talk on the hitters here. One thing that I do want to mention about Wood, if the Giants stay with this left-handed heavy lineup in this game, then Alex Wood's an excellent tournament option. He dominates left-handed pitching. So if the Giants roll out a left-handed lineup and they don't switch around too much, then you're definitely going to want to target Wood. The thing that's interesting here the most for me, and I think what was really interesting today was I was really expecting Posey to sit today. But it's the home opener. I have a tough time seeing them not play Posey at first and sit Belton this game. And he gets a lefty here in Alex Wood. I think Posey, one of the top options, and that $4,000 price tag should scare some people off.
Yeah, that's would be the one thing I would look at too. Maybe they slot him in at first base, potentially Posey. That is.
Yep.
But that kind of takes Brandon Belt out of play. Well, if Posey's starting at first, Belts clearly won't be starting, but he's been okay in lefty-lefty matchups. But I think he's the guy I'm not going to play today.
Yeah, the one guy that stands out to me as well, he's been a hitting machine to start the season here, is Matt Duffy, 3,300 on FanDuel. Another third baseman that I like today. I think there's a ton of options at third base today.
I would concur and have nothing to add.
All right. Any Dodgers that stand out to you? Like you said, Peavy, not terrible, but the Dodgers, one of the best teams in the league against right-handed pitching.
One of the things we want to look at is Justin Turner. Now, he's not been off to the most magnificent start. Hey, it's been 2.5 games. They still have yet to play tonight. But he is an absolute beast in righty-righty matchups. He's going to go against Peavy. Funny thing, over the last 2 years, he has a 390 WOBA, which is a weighted on-base percentage at home in Dodger Stadium over the last season and a half. And then He's the fourth highest WOBA of anybody with at least 600 plate appearances against right-handed pitchers. So we're talking about McCutchen, Harper, Dickerson, who got a lot of Colorado love, and then we've got Justin Turner.
Yeah, Justin Turner is going to be a friend of the podcast this year. He's going to be a guy that is talked about a lot in this podcast. I've talked about him all week, and I hope that here it is, another matchup that I like him in. Like you, I think that he's a good play, which gives us another third baseman. I don't see a third baseman being over 15% owned in this slate, which I absolutely love this kind of slate. So Adrian Gonzalez, 3,400, still underpriced. I like him again. It's hard not to like Adrian Gonzalez at 3,400 here.
Yes, he's one guy that is kind of he fell off towards the end of last season, but he had such a torrid start. He had something like 20 home runs through the first 8 weeks. It was something just absolutely insane. And then everything is kind of evened out, but it reminded everybody that he's a pretty darn good hitter still.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's swing it on over. Boston at Cleveland. I'm not allowed to talk about the Red Sox, but I do want to talk about Denny Salazar. I think he has a ton of strikeout upside here in this matchup. What are your thoughts here?
Absolutely. He's one of those guys that can get you 10 strikeouts. And we saw it last year a couple times, and the third guy's escaping my memory. Carlos Carrasco, Danny Salazar. Oh, and I can't think of the other guy, but they had 3 starts in a row where back to back where they each had 10 plus strikeouts and gave up 1 or less earned runs. And if you were following along with that on Daily Fantasy Sports, it was a very fun midweek event. But I do like him. Let's talk about the weaknesses of the Red Sox bats, if allowed to, because you're going to be objective. They have Big Poppy, who is fantastic going into his swan song season. He's 40 or 41 by the time he gets out of this season. I think he's interesting and in play, but I'm nervous about everybody else in that lineup, Stevie. What do you know as a true hardcore fan of Boston that I could be missing?
Poppy's played in 2 games this year, and he's hit a home run in both of them. So he's on pace to hit 162 home runs in his farewell season.
And he's going to be behind Story and Robinson Cano. Too bad.
Yeah, exactly, right? Mookie Betts is a good hitter. This kid's the real deal. Outside of that, Hanley has upside, but, we've seen it in the game on Wednesday. He hit a home run off Carrasco right after Poppy did. So there's upside in these 2 guys. Mookie's a good play. Outside of that, I'll be honest with you, there's a kid that I really like for Boston. It's Travis Shaw. This is a tough matchup here against Salazar. I really like Travis Shaw as a player. I think he actually deserves the position over Pablo, the Panda Sandoval. I think that, Shaw's a good player overall. So if you want a cheap third baseman, another third baseman. So, it's an interesting slate. But so we got Joe Kelly, who – pretty good against lefties last year. He hit around too bad by lefties, but struggled really heavily with righties. But you look at this lineup without Brantley, Kipnis is a guy that's cheap, and then they got quite a bit of righties. So this could be a really bad matchup for Joe Kelly here.
That's an interesting thing. And for anybody that watched the Roto-Grinders show this afternoon with our pal Dean Shabelson, Dean 78904, and Derek Carty, the creator and curator of The Bat, a new premium projection system available on Roto-Grinders, they were talking about reverse splits. Now, for those of you at home, reverse splits means generally righties hit lefties better, lefties hit righties better, and same-handed pitchers usually suppress same-handed batting and vice versa. Well, what Derek was saying is, and he's dug into the numbers way more than us, I think we can still look at outliers like Justin Turner or maybe even Joe Kelly. There are some players that do exhibit reverse splits. I think the blanket or the net is cast a little too wide, but he was saying even with somebody like Justin Turner, he thinks it potentially could be noise when you consider what the overall sample size is, even if it's 3 seasons worth. Just wanted to throw that out there for those of you, drinking your morning coffee and trying to get a little cerebral.
Yeah, the one thing I want to say about that is, playing baseball from the time I was 4 until I was, 23 years old. Um, I always hit righties better, and I was a righty, and I was a righty with a lot of power, and I always struggled against lefties. I don't know. It was more of like a mentality thing for me. I saw the ball better out of a right-hander than I did a left-hander. So yeah, the numbers might say one thing. Some people believe in things and some people don't. I believe in, baseball is baseball. It's a great game. And over time, stats have shown that some people do things differently than others. And that's the good thing about daily fantasy and having so many people giving you information. EMAC, you might think one thing, I might think the other. That's why RotoGrinders in whole is such a great, idea and a great site. And that's why this podcast brings on different people with me every day. I don't want people to just hear me. So anybody really standing out here on the Cleveland side of things?
No, you mentioned Kipnis. You could probably talk me into Lindor if there's nobody in the shortstop spot that I like. But that's kind of where things are going to end for me. I still need to see more out of Rajai Davis. I don't know how they're going to use him. Without Brantley there, they're still kind of feeling their way along. Can't really trust Marlon Byrd. Marlon Byrd's someone to keep an eye on, though, because he does go on those nice little hot streaks. Got to see it. Got to see the spark first. I haven't seen it yet through just 2 games.
Yeah, if Davis is in the leadoff spot, always a ton of upside. That's the only place that I would play him. Ubaldo Jimenez, Phil Hughes, Minnesota at Baltimore. Phil Hughes is a guy that, was it 2 seasons ago, put up some really solid numbers. And last year he regressed back to Phil Hughes. And, he got smacked around a lot by right-handed bats. I think that's going to stand out a lot here against Baltimore. Jimenez and Hughes, any thoughts here?
Pick on Phil Hughes any chance you get. He's another guy we got to throw out the reverse splits moniker. However, it's just seemed to be one season when he got lit up. But the season prior to that, he barely gave up any home runs. He's a guy who's probably going to give up at least 30 home runs this season. Baltimore's got guys up and down that lineup that can get him. Chris Davis, Manny Machado, if you want to get wild, JJ Hardy. There's all sorts of guys out there that we can look at from Baltimore.
Yeah, I love the Baltimore bats. Machado, a guy that I love a lot here. Another third baseman, just want to point that out there.
We're going to make a team of nothing but third baseman.
Dude, I would actually be really happy with that today. Chris Davis, another guy, 3,700, hit a home run in that Wednesday game. So when he gets locked in, he for some reason he hits much better at home than he does on the road. That's been the last 2 or 3 seasons. You look at his stats, and his stats have shown that he's been much better at home. Outside of that, Adam Jones stands out to me at 3,200 as a tournament option, and then I really don't like anything else.
Yeah, just looking at their teams, boy. Let's get Mark Trumbo. And then let's get Pedro Alvarez because we need redundancy. Oh, the Baltimore is going to be fun to load up on when things heat up in Camden Yards.
Yeah, what about Trumbo? You mentioned him. This is a good matchup for him against Hughes.
I'm not quite ready to call for the Trum bomb. I will at some point. Still a little early. Pricing is still exploitable enough, and there's not enough aces tomorrow that I don't think we have to dig super deep for someone like that. There's still several other plays that I would rather have. At some point, he will go through one of his mega slumps. We will have double dueling aces on the mound, and we will need savings everywhere, particularly on multi-pitcher sites. Oh, and then there will be the Trum bomb dance.
You say it like he can't pick up a stolen base or anything. He picked up a stolen base on opening day. Give the man a break here.
He broke from first, was headed towards second. The catcher started laughing so hard he went to throw and couldn't because he was just out of breath from laughing. That's how he got his stolen base.
Well, let's swing it on over to the Minnesota side of things. Sano, Park, and nothing else for me here.
I'm going to concur with that.
All right, Chicago Cubs at Arizona. The Cubs get a great and massive ballpark bump here, heading out to Arizona where it is extremely hot already, and the ball is flying as what we've seen here in Colorado-Arizona series so far this season. Lackey against Ruby De La Rosa. Let's talk John Lackey here. Tough matchup against Arizona. One of the higher priced pitchers on the board. Should have some run support here. Any thoughts on Lackey?
Scares the heck out of me. But we're going to have to pick somebody at some point. I can't do Lackey. The heat works both ways. There's enough power on a couple of the Arizona guys. I just can't do it, Stevie.
I was trying to talk into that one. I don't like him either. David Peralta, Jake Lamb, Goldschmidt, they have some really solid hitters in this Arizona lineup. Even Tomas is off to a pretty good start this season. So I want nothing to do with either one of these pitchers as well. Talk to me about some of these Cubs bats getting the ballpark bump here.
I think you can pretty much look at everyone. They are now moving to a National League park, so someone is going to be sitting tomorrow. They had the luxury of playing in the Los Angeles Anaheim Stadium, and they are not. So it's going to be interesting to see if it's Schwarber who sits. Jorge Soler may sit. I don't know who's going to catch. My guess is Montero catches. Hey, he spent a few years out there in Arizona. I think he's going to get the first shot at it this series. I don't think they want – are they going to put Schwarber behind the plate at all, or are they just going to try to hide him in the outfield these days?
You got to have his bat in the lineup. So days that Montero needs days off, I'm sure he'll catch. But
and we're using the term catch loosely, right?
Yeah, like you have to have this bat in the lineup. The kid has massive power. So Joe Madden is one of the best coaches in baseball, and he's going to find ways to get this guy in the lineup. If I had to guess, I agree with you. I think it's going to be Montero catching, and I think Soler will get the bench right here, and Schwarber will play the outfield. I don't think it really matters too much because, like you said, I think a lot of these guys in play, and we'll go ahead and lock in Anthony Rizzo as my top play of the day here. Ruby De La Rosa, 404 WOBA with a 30% hard contact rate and over a 2 home run per 9 against left-handed bats last year. Love Rizzo, love Hayward, love Fowler, love Schwarber, love the Cubs stack in this game today.
I didn't hear Chris Bryant. He's sad. He wants his shout out.
Yeah, well, he's going to need it on a different day.
Okay.
De La Rosa, man, really good against righties. So big-time reverse splits for him. 266 WOBA against righties, 404 WOBA against lefties. Big-time splits. I think Chris Bryant could be one of those guys that I don't play a lot. I don't think you fade any of the Cubs in this game.
Could be a little bit of a trap. Let somebody else assume that risk. They're going to look at how he does against righties, think it's good. They may not dig into the pitcher, and I agree. I agree on that one, Stevie.
So let's talk a little bit about the Diamondbacks. I mentioned a few names. Who are you liking here for the Diamondbacks?
Well, I don't know. That one is going to have to be Goldie because we always like Goldie. Peralta, I think, is going to be a mainstay. I know you are a major fan of his, as am I. He gets the short shrift a lot of times. He's usually fairly priced across most sites. And the best thing is he is not a household name. So casual fans, casual daily fantasy sports players, not going to be going after him. They're going to see that 3,600 and they're going to say, oh, but I recognize the names of Kyle Schwarber. I'm going to go there instead. So I think that makes it a decent play. I think you can – this may be – I want to see what they do with Segura. Are they going to lead him off every day? If they lead him off every day, then he's got some great hitters behind him. He's got some speed. I'm okay with putting him on there against Lackey. Lamb, I'm someone to keep an eye on. So for me, I think it's going to be Goldie, and it's going to be Peralta.
Yeah, Peralta, I play him way too much. The DraftKings sent that little email out saying who you played a lot last year. Shocking, Emac, Jake DeGrom and David Peralta. So that shocks absolutely nobody. Segura should continue to bat leadoff. It looks like they're pretty much committed to him at the top of the order. And it's hard to say, hey, we're going to take you at the top of the order with the type of games that he's been having so far. So I expect him to be in there. I have to say, Jacob Lamb, another third baseman that I like in this game. So making my whole lineup of third basemen is going to be very easy. Texas at the Angels, Derek Holland, Hector Santiago, two lefties battling it out in Anaheim here. What are your thoughts?
Holland has had his moments. It all comes down to, is he healthy or not? Hector Santiago was magnificent through the first half of last year. I believe, if I remember correctly, he made the all-star team, and then he completely fell off the shelf in the second half. Oh, I'm going to say if I'm picking either one of them, I'm going to pick Holland, but it's going to be reluctantly.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go the other way there. If I had to pick either one of these guys, it would be Santiago. He had a really good spring. A lot of talk around this kid, guy, whatever you want to call him, around him in spring training. A lot of things that were positive, and this could be one of those things where, might want to target him in the beginning of the season like we did last year, because he might not be able to have the gas to go in the second half. I think it's a good matchup here against Texas. Texas traveling here. They played at home yesterday, so they're traveling out to Anaheim in this game. I think if I had to pick one of these two guys, maybe on like a two-pitcher site, it would definitely be Santiago. Holland, like you said, a lot of injury, came back. I think he pitched like 58 innings last year, faced a lot of right-handed bats, and got smashed by a lot of right-handed bats last year. So that's one thing we want to point out. And when we talk about a lefty against Anaheim, we have to talk about Mike Trout.
He is pretty good at the baseball.
Yeah, he's pretty good at baseball. I'd say that he's probably best baseball player in baseball for the last 2 years.
416 WOBA, 266 ISO, and a 970 OPS for the last 2 seasons against lefties. Those are numbers that lead the leaderboard at most of those categories.
Yeah, definitely somebody you want to consider. His price tag is going to be high across the industry, so it's not easy to fit him in, but he's a guy that I think you can look at if you can fit him in. Pujols, 28. I had to look at it again. 2,800 on FanDuel on this all-day slate. That's really, really interesting there.
We need to take a moment, Stevie. We need to take a moment, and we need to think of all our friends who are Angels fans, and that he has 7 more years on that monster contract.
Boggs is sitting there, smashing his head up against his computer, listening to us talk about it. But yeah, I think he's in play. 2,800 for home run upside like Pujols has. I think you have to consider him. Another guy. You should know this guy pretty well. Yunel Escobar, 2,600, another third baseman that I like here.
Formerly, or he had a nice one year with the Nats, or maybe it was a season and a half last year. Somehow was in the top 10 almost the entire season for the batting race, and he had not 1, not 2, but 3 5-hit games last season, including 2 in an 8-day span for the Nationals. It was the most bizarre thing I have ever seen.
Yeah, he hits left-handed pitching very well. He's hit leadoff, I think, in a couple of the games here for the Angels. If he's hitting leadoff, another option at third base that I like at 2,600.
To be fair on that one, you'll want to look at him for other sides because he played a lot of shortstop and a lot of second base over the last couple of years. And yeah, I believe he had some time out there with Tampa Bay. So he's kind of a utility infielder. You may get a variation in positions for him across the different areas. So not everybody's going to be at third base. So I think maybe on Fantasy Feud or perhaps Draft Day, where they have some slightly different positioning, you may be able to get him at a different spot other than the hot corner.
I miss anybody for the Angels that you like here?
No, that'll do it for me. We're sorely disappointed in Cole Calhoun. He's kind of regressed dramatically or gone the opposite direction of where we thought his career track was going to be. He'll be someone that I'm sure you'll talk about in later podcasts, but he's got to figure out what's wrong with his swing, with his approach, with kind of everything, because the talent is definitely there, but he's taken like 3 steps backwards.
I definitely agree with that. Now, looking at the Texas side of things, they faced a lefty today on Wednesday, and they were able to hit him pretty good. Some interesting options. What are your thoughts here on Texas?
Well, whenever we think of lefties in Texas, we have to consider Adrian Beltre. Yeah, he's getting a little older. Yeah, the bat speed's kind of going. But over the last 2 seasons, 320 at-bats. He has a 405 WOBA, which is just phenomenal and a 218 ISO, which is in that elite range. He's not the bopper that he once was, but he gets a good spot in the order, and as long as people are on base for him, he's got some chance to make some noise. A sneaky guy who's bounced around. I think this is his fourth or fifth team in 3 years. Justin Ruggiano is a situational player that when he is out there going against the lefty, he's going to get pulled once that lefty goes out, but you're going to find him at near minimum price across the industry every time he gets a start.
Yeah, I like that as well. EMAC, that pretty much wraps it up for me, my friend. A lot of good stuff here. You're almost on Grinders Live a ton. Is there anything else you got going on? Incentives, articles? You want to talk about that real quick?
Sure. We've kind of got a new approach that we're doing here at RotoGrinders for our incentives. So for FanDuel and for DraftKings, we are breaking things up a little bit into a new article and format style. We have put together one of the best collections of talent to do some of these articles and things, and we want to give people a different look at how top gamers approach different things. So one of the things we're doing is we're not all on static articles, particularly on FanDuel and DraftKings. People are going to be rotating through. You're going to see some of the best out there. Our featured guys are going to be JM to Win, and he's doing what's called the MLB Edge. And then not to be topped, but I believe Cheese is Good has what he calls the $1 Million Musings, and he's going to be covering FanDuel. Now we can say the $1 Million Musings because he is one of two people that has won $1 million prizes twice. He did it in baseball. The first time he did it was at a live finals. The second time was in the big DraftKings event. I think it was $1,500 for a ticket. He paid in one ticket, single entry, took that bad boy down.
Yeah, man. And we'll see you in these articles, 5 days a week, 6 days a week?
Yeah, I'll be bouncing around between the different sites. The other styles we have is we're doing a game selection article. We're doing an article focusing on the all-value lineup, and then we're doing an article focusing on pitching. So we're breaking things up. We're going to go a little more in-depth this season, but you will still have the grind down. You will have the cheat sheets. You will have a variety of ways that you can see this information. This is very, very important. As Stevie touched on it, we can present the data and look at the data in many different ways and all be right. That's the best thing about baseball because there are so many different ways it can go. It's a sport based on variance. You don't want to bounce around between different strategies yourself. You want to find what works for you. And when you hone in on that, when your day comes and you hit, you're going to hit big. But you need to find what works for you. And we all have inherent styles that are slightly different from one another.
That is one thing that I love about daily fantasy and being an analyst. There are so many different styles. EMAC, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. I'll be back tomorrow to wrap up the first week for the morning grind on Friday. I'm Stevie TPFL. Good luck in your games today, and we'll see you again tomorrow.